miss all the fun. All right, ready? All right. All right, good morning, everybody. The House Committee on Economic Development and Small Business will come to order. Mr. Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Chair Hoskins.
Here.
Representative Grant.
Present.
Witsat. Neely.
Here.
Liberati.
Here.
Sophia.
Here.
Farhat.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Tisdale.
Here.
Van Workum. Martin.
Here.
Roth.
Here.
St. Germain.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have 11 members present in the quorum.
All right, thank you. And thank you all for being here today. After a failed attempt, this is our first meeting of 2024. And what a meeting it is. Very exciting time. I hope you all had a wonderful new year. We got a busy day ahead, so I want to just go ahead and get started because we have a lot of people who want to testify. I have a lot of cards here. So with that, we are going to start the process for taking up House Bills 4907 and 4908. With that, the committee will go at ease.
All right, the committee will come to order, and the chair recognizes Representative Jason Hoskins and Representative John Roth.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, I am very excited to be here with all of you, as well as Representative Roth this morning to talk about our bills 4907 and 4908, which collectively would create the Multimedia Jobs Act, a new economic incentive for the film and other multimedia projects here in Michigan. And part of the reason why I'm so excited about this is because I really do think we've put together a very robust piece of legislation that will really be a pro-jobs and pro-economy and pro-Michigan piece of legislation. So you might be saying, you know, haven't we played this game before? Or, I mean, I guess for this, you know, haven't we watched this episode or have we seen this movie before? And it's true that many years ago, Michigan tried a film incentive program and it didn't really go that well. And I know that's on the mind of many of the members as well as many of the people that I've talked to about this piece of legislation really throughout the year. And I've certainly valued those conversations as we've worked through this legislation. I know that people are a little hesitant about this incentive program because they think about the last incentive program from 15 years ago. And I am certainly here to tell you that this is not that program. This proposed legislation was built from the ground up, working alongside professionals who help craft other states' film and multimedia incentive legislation. We tried to scrutinize it from every angle. The program is built on evidence-based successes from competing states, and yes, we even looked at what went wrong here in Michigan's program. This work provided us with a roadmap around the metaphorical hurdles and challenges to the past to help create what I think will be meaningful and long-lasting public policy. The worst thing we can do now is just not try and allow Michigan to fall further behind the rest of the nation on this. There are 40 other states and cities and territories that have similar incentive programs like this, and they're either expanding them or extending them or making them program because they are finding so much success with them. There is no reason why Michigan shouldn't be in the game too and experiencing many of the same successes that other states have. We have a lot of people here today to testify. I'm certainly looking forward to hearing from them. And I want to make sure that I kind of cover at a high level some of the biggest changes that we've made to this from the old program to the new program. I guess the most important thing is really to highlight that in the old program, it drew taxpayer dollars right out of the general fund. This program absolutely does not do that. With this program, we want to make sure that any money that we make here, it stays in Michigan, that is vetted by a Michigan CPA to ensure that Michigan labor and businesses are used. The old program lacked vetting and oversight. It was criticized as a, quote, Hollywood handout, as it allowed millions of taxpayer dollars to line the pockets of directors and producers and A-list actors. Our legislation features a compensation cap to make sure dollars are going where they should. This new legislation has safeguards in place to prevent the pass-through abuses and loopholes of the old program. In fact, the new legislation has many guardrails in place to stop abuses, including a credit cap and a 10-year sunset. Our legislation also does away with one of the most dangerous components of the old program, the funding of sound stages and motion picture studios, which left so many taxpayers paying the tab when it fell through. That's completely gone. We also did away with many of the things that caused a lot of issues in the past, loans for projects, allowing the free use of government premises for funded projects. And I can go on and on about many of the changes that we put in, but I definitely want to make sure that I give Representative Roth some time to speak. I also will be bringing up Alexander Page from the Michigan Film Industry Association. He's an expert in this. He's someone who we've been working with on this legislation, and he'll be able to go into more of the technical details of this legislation. So Representative Roth and I will give our testimony. I will then go back up. Representative Roth will go back up, and then Alexander Page will come. And then after that, we'll have questions for the three of us. So with that being said, Representative Roth.
Thank you, Chairman Hoskins. Appreciate it. I have to go back to the 2008 when this all started. The first film credits, I was sucked in by accident. There was a movie filmed at the marina that I run, and I still run it today. Josh Lucas, A Year in Mourning, turned into The Hideaway. It was a great little film. But I have to tell you how it started, and it started with a card on my desk at the marina. There was a card from the West Michigan Film Office that was thrown on my desk, and I came in and said to one of my staff, "What is that about?" "Well, I don't know. Somebody from the film industry came by. They want to look at the marina, whatever." Okay. So I didn't think about it for a month, and finally it just kept sitting there, and it was driving me nuts. So I had to call. So I called the West Michigan Film Office and said, "Well, okay, what kind of joke is this? What do you want to film?" "Sure, right, at our marina." And the guy said, "No, this is serious. There is a director that wants to come look at your marina in August to think about doing a movie at your marina." And I said, okay. So in August, the director showed up, Chris Airy. He did Smoke Signals, if anybody's familiar, Native American director, one of the first ones that got a really blockbuster hit. He shows up and says, "This is what we want to do. We want to film the movie here at this marina." And now what they did say was, "We want to film it in November." And I said, "You guys are nuts. You know what November in northern Michigan's like?" "Yeah, we want it to be doom and gloom, and we want it to be kind of nasty. That kind of fits the film." Well, we had the nicest November we've ever had in northern Michigan. We actually were on a boat on the Monday after Thanksgiving. It was 65 degrees. I was in a vest, and we had a ripple of a wave out on Grand Traverse Bay. That just doesn't happen. But anyway, it was a wonderful thing. The only thing that got me is that the marina said, "You can film it here, John, but you're in charge of the whole marina. And if anything happens, it's up to you. You and your insurance will cover this." So $4.5 million marina, I was now responsible for any damage. Well, it turned out fantastic, and there was true economic value that was provided to the marina and the city of Traverse City and the surrounding area. Hotels and restaurants were full with production staff, workers, film production, you name it. Some of the actors were in the local restaurants and hotels, so that was kind of exciting at the time. City of Traverse City downtown filmed a fake crash scene, and that brought out a bunch of people, closed downtown for a day on a Sunday so people could come out and watch it. So it brought a lot of activity and excitement. Some of the other people, the IBEW electricians, were local electricians that served on the film. They were fantastic. I will nothing but praise for them, because every day they came to me and said, "John, what can we make easier here? What's in the way? What truck can we move? What can we do?" They were fantastic for us. The marina gained a deck and a couple tents because our old deck they didn't like, so they built a new deck and gave us a couple tents. So, hey, it was fantastic. We actually gained from that, and it was a true economic value for us and the surrounding area. Even the bonsai tree grower guy in Traverse City, which I didn't know we had a bonsai tree grower guy, his trees were in the movie, and they came out and they trimmed and showed the actors how to do everything on the tree and that kind of thing. So even down to that end, it was quite valuable. And some have said, as Chairman Hoskins, and I believed at the time, the 2008 film credits failed to a certain point. As I look back at the numbers and think about this economic development, I don't think it was a total failure. Look, we only got 60% of the 100% that came to Michigan. But that 60% we weren't getting and we're not getting today. Where's that 60%? Give me back the 60%. Now, the way it was handled, Chairman Hoskins is 100% right. But we had a major value with films that came into Michigan at that time. Yes, we let some go, and that's what we're working on today. The problem was, I think people looked at it as, if we can get the filmmakers in the state of Michigan and go around northern Michigan, all over the state of Michigan, see how beautiful it is, they'll set roots down and make things happen, do production and everything else. That's where we maybe failed and didn't incentivize more, was to keep that action here in Michigan. That needed to happen, and we didn't get it. So that's what we're working on today. It's more of the production end of it, and that the projects will stay here. People will produce the movies here. We can keep some of our kids here. And that's really why I got engaged in this package. My daughter's in film production at Grand Valley. She's a senior this year. She isn't looking at Michigan to stay. My daughter's already considering that deep, deep blue state of South Carolina. They have film production. She's going to go there and stay with her grandpa and grandma, live with them while she sets up a career in South Carolina. Or she can go next door to North Carolina. Or she can go to Georgia, right next door again. They seem to be doing quite well. Quite well. And there's no reason why Michigan, if we do this right, can't have it here in Michigan too. We do have the scenery, there's no doubt about it. It's making sure we incentivize folks to stay here, do the production here, make it long-term that they will stay here. That's the key to this whole project. We were at an economic conference in Traverse City just a couple weekends ago. I briefly mentioned the film production that we were talking about. And afterwards, many people in the audience came up and said, "My daughter's going to Grand Valley for film production. My son's going to Michigan State. He's just entering this year." They're all in film production. None of them plan on staying in the state of Michigan. If we're serious about keeping our youth in the state of Michigan and growing our population, this is not the answer for all of it. I'm not going to try and say this silver bullet, but it would definitely help if we want to keep our youth here at home. We need to ask them what they want to do with their careers. What are they interested in? We're not doing that. We're hoping that this is possible thing that would help keep those folks here. And as the chairman said, some people will call this a liberal Hollywood elites giveaway. I bring that back to the boating industry, which I'm involved with. I remember a while back during the good recession there in 2008 area, where people said, "Don't buy a yacht. Why would you do that? That's embarrassing to do that." Well, do anybody ever think about the people that build the boat? Do you think about the small town of Cadillac who builds boats? How about those workers? Maybe the yacht is expensive, but how about the workers that do the job? There's no difference in this business right here. Yes, there's actors that make big money. There's also a ton of people behind them doing the production, the filming, everything that goes behind the scenes, the electricians. Those people are trying to make a living and stay in their own state, and we're telling them, well, sorry. I run into multiple people from the movie that was filmed at the marina. Still see him today. I just saw one this summer who told me still doing the production end of it, but he's in every state around us but us. Let's see if we can keep our residents home. Let's see if we can keep our residents working in the state of Michigan. This is not the silver bullet, but darn it, it's a good start, and I think it's a great way to go. So I'm happy to be part of this.
Thank you very much, and the committee will go at ease.
Committee will come back to order. All right, next we will have Alexander Page from the Michigan Film Industry Association. All right, whenever you're ready, Mr. Page.
Thank you, committee members, for your time this morning. My name is Alexander Page. I'm a resident and small business owner in Linden, Michigan, and I also serve as the legislation chair for the Michigan Film Industry Association. And I'm here to express wholeheartedly our support for the Michigan Multimedia Jobs Act, focusing on House Bills 4907 and 4908. Picture this: the beauty and the uniqueness of each of your legislative districts showcased on screens, captivating audiences and enticing them to explore these places in person. All brought to you by supporting Michigan businesses and employment of hard-working Michiganders. Take the recent success of the Detroit Lions playoff run, for example. It generated over $60 million in economic activity in Detroit, benefiting hotels, restaurants, and stores far beyond the stadium's 65,000 ticket fans. This economic impact mirrors what our industry brings to every state every time we produce a film, a TV series, or a commercial. Currently, there are over 40 states and cities and over 100 programs globally that offer incentives for multimedia production. Most of these productions are required to film in states and countries that have these incentives. Without our program, Michigan simply can't compete. That puts us at a disadvantage against our neighbors like Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. This bipartisan Multimedia Jobs Act was built from the ground up. It was designed to take the best from other programs and avoid the past errors by using best practices that benefit Michigan first and foremost. It creates jobs. It prioritizes in-state labor and businesses. It promotes diversity, minimizes Michigan's brain drain and the exit of our youth, and it boosts our tourism. For this program, notably, it includes commercials, corporate videos, and commercial photography, making it more attractive compared to other states. This act will encourage investment in our state and establish Michigan as a leader in the multimedia industry as the place to work, live, and visit. Globally, the multimedia industry is booming, with television, streaming, digital content leading the way. We're all watching a lot more content with the COVID boom. And there's a lot of advertising that now needs to be supporting all of that. The multimedia and creative industry is one of the largest growing industries in the world. The Multimedia Jobs Act positions Michigan as that prime destination for productions, creating thousands of new jobs in filmmaking, animation, post-production, and related fields. Most importantly, we anticipate the direct spend of approximately $6 billion to $8 billion in the first 10 years of the program. Let me say that again. We are anticipating direct spend of $6 billion to $8 billion in Michigan in the first 10 years. The inclusion of commercials, corporate videos, and commercial photography production in this act creates infrastructure. It builds the local labor force and the brick and mortar businesses that make the foundation for a successful production community. Multimedia productions help bolster small businesses and the local economy. These projects have a ripple effect, benefiting other Michigan businesses like hotels, restaurants, construction, retail, security, and transportation, just to name a few. On average, each film engages the services of approximately 60 local vendors. As Michigan small business owner and a producer, I know firsthand how these productions can positively impact many different communities, businesses, and people. When you read the credits at the end of a movie, you see hundreds of names of all the businesses and people that were hired, not some large corporation. Majority of all the work in the industry is all done by small business owners and individuals. In addition to prioritizing Michigan business and labor, the Multimedia Jobs Act incentivizes hiring minorities, women, veterans, and the disabled. The bill is a transferable tax credit, not a rebate. This means that the credit must stay in the state and only benefits Michigan companies. From the moment a production starts, spending begins and stimulates the local economy. We don't have to wait for a plant to be built. We don't have to wait for anything. It starts immediately. And Michigan gets that economic benefit from the spending well before the credit's issued, which is typically 1 to 2 years later. And it doesn't cost us anything unless money is spent. The bill ensures a steady and sustainable growth with the 10-year sunset, allowing time for small businesses to build the infrastructure and grow crew and talent and hire more people. The bills are fiscally responsible as a priority with an initial credit cap of $125 million for each of the first 3 years and grows gradually over time. There's a built-in redemption fee that helps Michigan fund the Michigan Film and Digital Media Office, and mandatory reporting will ensure the program remains accountable. A flourishing multimedia industry showcases Michigan's beauty, diversity, and talent to the world, and boosts our economy, featuring iconic locations like the natural beauty of the UP, historic Mackinac Island, the wine country in Traverse City, farmland in mid-Michigan, and cities like Grand Rapids and Detroit. All featured Michigan-made projects will contribute to a sense of pride among residents. In conclusion, the Michigan Multimedia Jobs Act is fiscally responsible for our state's economic growth needs while growing and retaining talent. It's pro-jobs, it's pro-economy, and it's pro-Michigan. That positions our state as a leader in multimedia once again. Michigan has a compelling story to tell, so let's make it in Michigan. Thank you, committee members, for your time and your consideration for House Bills 4907 and 4908. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Page. All right, I'm going to open it up for questions from the committee members. And I wanted to start off real quick because you touched on a lot of the things, a lot of the economic benefits that Michigan can really benefit from this legislation. And so I kind of want to talk about or ask you just, can you give examples from other regions, other states that have similar legislation where there's been substantial job creation and economic development in the multimedia sector?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So many states have programs, we've mentioned over 40 states and cities. Two really good examples are Georgia and Illinois. Recently, they just had reports coming out. Georgia, for example, in 2016 had 3.3 million workday hires. It's a lot of work. In 2022, they had $4.4 billion of spend to the economy. They had over 800,000 additional visitors to their tourism that generated $172 million for the state. And over 10 years, they had $1.2 billion worth of capital invested into their state. They also stated that Less than 8% of the productions would have been there if they didn't have a program. For Illinois, they have generated on average $11.5 in direct spend for every dollar that was issued in credits. They're currently having another 10 years of that program extended last year because they know the value. And because of that 10-year extension, there was an announcement of the Field Studio, which is going to create 12,000 jobs and $1.3 billion of economic growth in the first 5 years after being built.
All right, thank you for that. I have a question from Representative Tisdale.
A few quick questions, if I may. Thank you, Alexander or Mr. Page, for coming this morning. First question up front. This is an incentive program, quote, end quote. How much upfront money, this is a tax credit program, how much upfront money is the industry asking for with these bills?
None. So the way the program works is just like you go on a business trip. The production company has to spend the money in the state. They collect the receipts from their program. They have it verified by a Michigan licensed independent CPA, and then they turn it in and they'll get a credit 1 to 2 years later. So it doesn't cost the state anything until money has already been spent in the state, and then they'll get a credit 1 to 2 years later.
So if there's no accrued tax burden as a result of the activities, there's no tax credit.
Correct.
This applies only to Michigan-based companies. They can be out of state but have to have at least one location in the state or be licensed or filed to do business in the state. Could you explain that, please?
Yeah, so an out-of-state company can come in. If they do not have a Michigan tax liability, that's when they can transfer the credit to somebody who does. The good news about that is it can be any industry. It could be tool and die, manufacturing, it could be a brewery, you name it. Any Michigan company can then buy that transferable tax credit. So the credit only benefits Michigan companies. So it is, if you're out of state, you can only use it to offset Michigan taxes.
So even if there's a benefit accrued, it doesn't go away. It can be sold
Correct.
through a mechanism to other Michigan-based companies.
Right, so there are no winners or losers in the industry, so you don't have to participate in the film. This is for all Michigan businesses.
And last but not least, you projected $6 to $8 billion spend, and I can't remember what period of time you were talking about. What's the anticipated spend? Is that incremental, or what's the anticipated spend without this?
So without this, we normally don't have any activity right now. I can tell you that when we had the program that was announced in 2008, the year before the program, there was only $2 million worth of spend in the state of Michigan. The first year we had it, it was $100 million, and it went up to $200 by year 3. So currently, right now, most of the work is all going to other states. So right now, it's pretty non-existent. We have a lot of our businesses and film going out of state to film because marketers and production companies are required to go to states that have programs.
Okay. And again, in the last program, that $100 million or $200 of incremental spend, that had to pay back some of the upfront money that was as a part of that last program.
Correct.
Which doesn't exist this time around.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
All right, Representative Kofia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chair and Roth, for bringing this forward. I think these questions might be for the two of you, if that's okay. Okay. So obviously, as was pointed out, there was a lot of attention paid to the last iteration, and you talked about sort of this is not that. I'm curious if you could just reiterate what were the factors when you look at the old versions of the law? What were the factors that caused the state to actually lose money? And what specific ways have you addressed that within the new version? So that's my first question. The second one, I just keep thinking about the idea of we want to generate economic activity and we want to generate jobs, but the premise of a film project, there's an end date. The film does not go on forever. TV series, same thing. So in terms of long-term jobs, maybe I just don't understand the industry well, but could you speak, just maybe this is for you, but how do we incentivize, let's say, John's daughter to stay in the state? Will she have sustained income and a sustained job if there's sort of a boom bust with projects. So maybe let's start with what lessons did we learn and how are we going to make sure Michigan doesn't lose money on this version first?
All right. Jen,
Thank
you
you.
wanna-
Sure. Be happy to do that, absolutely. Good question, Representative Kofia. The long term in particular, if you sustain a production facility or production in Michigan, the jobs aren't necessarily going to be year and year and year, but you're certainly going to have a lot more of them. So our staff that worked on the movie in Grand Traverse County, they were there for 2 months. It was fairly short-lived, but they already had jobs lined up in another state. And so they are working nonstop. It just, the projects can be small or they can be big, they can be large. It's a matter what they sign up for to do. But the more activity you have, the more chance they have of actually keeping busy and staying in the state. What we had before wasn't necessarily successful on that part. The other part, I would say, is that we did pay back a tax value to them. So just example, the movie that we had in Grand Traverse, spent a little less than $4 million, and they took almost $1 million out of the state of Michigan to go to New Mexico to produce the film. That was probably my disappointment when watching that happen. There was no incentive for them to produce it right here in Michigan, and that, if that continues, it'll be short-lived. They'll come in, they'll film their thing, and leave. And this movie was actually tentatively set to produce in Wisconsin. And we stole them away with the beauty and the incentives. But it did not keep them long-term in the state. And if we can develop that long-term production availability, then my daughter and other daughters and sons hopefully will be able to produce in the state of Michigan, keep busy that way. With the current process, I don't see that. Absolutely. There are some small producers. Alex, one of them. But I know Rich Brower up in Traverse City does his thing. But these are very small indie type films that, and I don't even want to. I don't want this to go over that it's films. That's part of it. It's all the other that we don't do. Our big three autos makers don't film their commercials in Michigan. That's why you see a Chevy Tahoe by a mountain or an ocean front. It's because they're not doing it here. They're going to where they get the incentives. So we could start seeing commercials. The big three and others, corporations, Rocket Mortgage, they don't film their commercials in Michigan. They do it somewhere else. So I hope that answered some of it.
Just that, thank you. And so you're saying that the differences are, you've built in, for example, that the production cannot go out of state.
Correct.
For them to qualify. So that's one. Are there other safeguards that have been built in, perhaps, Chair Hoskins, in terms of, or was that the big flaw, do you feel, with the last version?
So I think one of the biggest things, and I kind of covered it in the beginning, was the fact that this was money that was coming really from the general fund, as opposed to, in our legislation, it's now a tax credit. And that money, as kind of in the questioning of Representative Tisdale, we make sure that that money stays here in Michigan. And we are verifying that that money is spent here in Michigan, used by Michigan labor, for Michigan businesses. That's one of the biggest differences that we've seen. And that was really one of the reasons why it cost so much in the beginning. We were losing out on so much. So having that change in the legislation is something that I think will really be beneficial for the state.
Thank you. Last piece. I'll follow my colleague's lead. I had several questions. With these jobs, what kind of, I'm always thinking, and I know you met, Rep. Roth mentioned IBEW. I know union jobs, they have benefits. What about non-unionized labor that is incentivized to come and are able to get jobs, projects? Do they have a benefits package? I don't know enough about the film industry to know this, but I am curious what kind of jobs and what kind of compensation and benefits do they actually receive, depending on the position?
I'll talk in some just broad pictures. Thank you, Representative. I think one of the points I do want to mention was about how do you build long-term jobs. And one of the biggest things for any program is stability and long-term. So having a 10-year sunset with a steady cap knows that you're growing gradually under time. You want to be able to know that you're there. What you're trying to do is motivate businesses to invest. You're not trying to build it yourself. So that's one area. I think the other part in terms of jobs, we're just like the construction industry. when you have a big bridge to build, you scale up, you go to a small one, and you move on. These are good, high-paying jobs. When you talk about crew members, yes, we're working maybe 6 to 8 months out of the year, but from a salary standpoint, it's about the full year. So these are really high-paying jobs, knowing that you're working that type of work. And that's only a small piece of the pie, because part of our legislation is that if you not only do the production here, if you do the post-production, it counts. So we're talking about high-paying visual effects, editing, and you're talking about when you have 10 years, you're looking at then more and more projects and more of these businesses, the small businesses, creating the jobs. And I think the other important thing to note when you're talking about jobs is everybody only thinks about actors and your crew members. On a typical film, that may only be 30 to 40% of the entire expenditures. The other 60% is all the other businesses that help support it. So that's your carpenters, your lumber yards, retail, catering. So most of the money that's being spent is actually going to other small businesses. So what you're doing is you're just influxing that money into the economy across different industries.
All right, Rep. Roth?
Yeah, I just wanted to share too, I got paid really well. On the movie that I was on, I was the liaison between the marina and the film, and everyone on there gets paid very well. Now, short-term, potentially, but the pay was very good. And in order to get a job, I believe a lot of the production crew belonged to, I don't know, say necessarily a union like we might think of it here, but they were part of a crew that they can apply for jobs throughout the United States.
Yes.
And I could have been a SAG member because I got 2 seconds in the movie. I didn't pay my fee. I should have.
Very good point, yes. And so there is a lot of mix of union and non-union jobs. That's all handled, just like any other industry or organization, but there's benefits with the companies, and so, yeah.
You all set, Rep. Kofia?
So they do receive benefits. That was one of the pieces that I was trying to
For the
understand.
union people, yes, but again, you're talking from individual companies' benefits, so that's all, on an individual business.
How many folks within the ecosystem of filmmaking, commercials, whatever it might be, how many, what percentage within that ecosystem are members of unions versus not typically?
I do not have that number, but we can look into it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you. And I have one more question for Rep. Woodsett, and then we'll move on to the next thing.
Mine is not so much a question, it's more of a statement. These things are not just also of these groups coming in and just leaving. It's also the locations that actually stay here. I bought my first car because of doing work for BASF every summer. That's how I was able to get my first vehicle. That place was located in Highland Park, and they stayed there and they did projects throughout the years, but that was my summer job. I did TV commercials for Ford and so forth, so I remember those days when they used to do those things here, and that's how I made my money straight out of high school. So those jobs were plentiful here, and that was just the thing that a lot of us did. So when we talk about stability and people staying here, those are the things that keep people working and staying here and doing those productions and the carpentry and all those other things that you talk about. So think about those things as well, that people do keep these businesses right here and keep them local.
All right. Thank you, Rep. Woodsett. And with that, thank you so much, Mr. Page. All right. Next, we actually have a video from a crew member, Sahir Rashid, and it actually really highlights some of the things that Rep. Roth and many of us have been talking about as far as making sure we keep talent here in the States. So if you want to go ahead and play that.
It was 2009. I was 32 years old, single dad, and I had been out of work for over a year due to the housing market crashing. My daughter was 6 years old. I had zero income coming in because I was a 1099 employee and I was not eligible for unemployment benefits. Out of work, no vehicle, and living with my mom raising my 6-year-old daughter. I didn't know I was depressed, but I was depressed, looking back at it. One day I got up, got dressed, and got on a bus to go downtown Detroit just to get some fresh air, and I saw the movie Red Dawn filming. So I thought it'd be a good idea to sneak on set and ask the director, do I have to go to school to work in film? And I met the sound mixer by the name of Kurt Francis. He was an Oscar Award winner for mixing sound on Born Supremacy. And to me, he looked like the director. You know, he had his glasses on a string, he had a director's chair. When I asked him, how do you become a director? He told me that's like asking, how do you become the president? I hung out on set for about 3 or 4 hours, and then I realized that my daughter was getting ready to get out of school. So I let Kurt know that I had to leave. I came back the next day, and then that's when they asked me to meet the other assistant directors. They were explaining that department to me and how it worked. I could just start in a business as a production assistant and work my way up to assistant directing, and then go from there, either into producing or even becoming a director. I went from having no job to being gainfully employed, working every day in a matter of weeks. I just went to ask a question. I wasn't expecting to get a job. So when I was working, I had to pinch myself like, am I really here? You know? And then I was meeting the other kids that was working as PAs, and a lot of them went to school for film, and I had just walked up. And so it was like, wow, like I'm here. So I was thanking Kurt every other day. And he was like, it's okay, just go work. The job was a blessing, but I still had to get there. So every day I had to catch the bus. I had to be at the bus stop at 3 a.m., 3:30 a.m. sometime. And it was cold. We talked in November, December, so that's what I had to do. And at the end of the film, they gifted me a 1997 Mercury Sable. It was overwhelming. The Filming Center was great because after Red Dawn, numerous films came to Michigan after that. That following year in 2010, I pretty much worked on every movie that came to the city of Detroit. When the Film Incentive left, it was 2014. I was working on Superman versus Batman, and that was the last big movie to touch Michigan. I hated to do it, but I had to leave to finish my career. So I moved to Texas, and from Texas, after a year, I went to Atlanta, and a lot of Michiganders are in Atlanta working, and I ran into a lot of them, and all of us want to come back home. Right now, I'm living in Atlanta, and I go home to my apartment. I have no family there. Life isn't all about work, it's about a healthy balance. So if the Multimedia Jobs Act passes here, Michigan will blow up, and a lot of people will stay, and a lot of people who left will come back. Work will be bigger than it ever was before.
All right. This is a video just highlighting again the importance of this legislation and what we think potentially it can do for the state. Next, I want to have some folks from our universities come up. So next, we're going to have testifying in support of the bills, Mark Bruckey, Associate Vice President of Economic Development at Lawrence Tech, and Brendan Credo, a Director of Film Studies at Oakland University, and Hannah Dunaway, a student at Grand Valley State University. All right, you each, we have about 3 minutes each. You can keep it in there.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Mark Bruckey. I'm Associate Vice President for Economic Development at Lawrence Technological University. I am responsible for professional and workforce development, industry partnerships, entrepreneurship, and developing industry-focused centers and institutes. LTU is located in Southfield, Michigan, and is home to 3,200 students, with 95% of our students and graduates retaining in Michigan after graduation. We focus on technological, experiential learning, and skills development in partnership with industry. LTU fully supports House Bills 4907 and 4908. These bills result in great sustainable jobs, talent, retention, and robust economic development in Michigan. They align with LTU's defining pillars of technological eminence, research and creative practice, interdisciplinary agility, professional excellence, and industry inclusion. They provide tremendous opportunities for increased student access, achievement, jobs, and economic mobility in Michigan and have a direct impact on the state's 60 by 30 and Oakland County's Oakland 80 college attainment objectives. The passage of these bills have a direct positive impact on increasing the pipeline and admission of high school students into LTU, especially through LTU's dual enrollment programs that we have with over 50 high schools. The bills will benefit students in over 20 LTU programs, such as SPECS at LTU, formerly Specs Howard School of Media Arts. SPECS at LTU is poised to increase due to the passage of these bills, especially among career and technical education, graphic arts, digital media, media communications, and marketing students. The bills will help spur academic innovation, research and development, and advancement of multimedia technologies and workforce development at LTU in concert with industry. One key example of the high growth opportunities in this area is of virtual production and the use of Epic Unreal Engine. Virtual production has numerous high-tech, high-paying jobs associated with it and spans multiple industry segments, including film and television, video gaming, corporate videos, education, and more. LTU is dedicated to growing and scaling virtual production in collaboration with industry that will provide very attractive academic programs, workforce development certifications, and jobs for students and professionals alike. In closing, Michigan is poised to become a dynamic, creative, technological, multimedia innovation hub through the passage and adoption of House Bills 4907 and 4908. LTU supports these bills and encourages full support from the Michigan legislature. Thank you.
Thanks. Oh, sorry.
Good morning, Chair Hoskins, Vice Chair Grant, Vice Chair Tisdale, committee members. My name is Brendan Cradell. I'm the Director of Film Studies and Production at Oakland University. First, might I just take a moment to say I've spent my career studying the media industries and media policy, so this is a rare pleasure to be in the proverbial room where it happens, so thank you for having me. I'm here to express my support for House Bills 4907 and 4908, and in particular, I wanted to speak to 2 points. Firstly, the importance of the media industries to our state economy, and then secondly, to echo what my colleague from Lawrence Tech has just said, the impact that this legislation is going to have on higher education and talent retention here in Michigan. So the U.S. economy has seen a boom in the media sector since the pandemic. Growth in the sector has more than doubled that of GDP at large over the last 4 years. Culture is now $1 trillion business, and that's with a T. Even that figure, 1,000 Barbies, 1,000 Oppenheimers each year, understates what we're talking about here. And that's because it doesn't fully take into account the scope of the digital economy. To give you a sense of what I mean, PricewaterhouseCoopers estimates that in 2025, advertising spending will eclipse that of consumer spending for the first time. So we are talking about one of the largest and quickest growing economies in the world. However, sadly, Michigan lags the national average in this sector. And we've also fallen behind our peers in the Great Lakes as well, not only in Minnesota and Wisconsin and Illinois and Ohio and Pennsylvania, but also notably right across the river in Ontario. Arts and culture make up a greater percentage of GDP than it does here in Michigan, and this is something that we need to address. Sustainable incentives for media production in Michigan will have cascading effects, catalyzing growth both throughout the arts and culture sector, but as well as beyond. And as I'm sure this committee well knows, one of the principal challenges confronting our state at present is invigorating sluggish population growth. Yet our colleges and universities are actually a rare demographic bright spot at present. We're doing a comparatively good job as a state attracting and retaining young people in the 18 to 24 age bracket here in Michigan. What we're doing a really poor job of doing is keeping those people in the 25 to 44 age bracket in Michigan as they begin and develop their careers. The Multimedia Jobs Act represents an important opportunity to do just that. And so to give you a very concrete sense of what I mean, I direct a program at Oakland University that has thrived over the last decade. At a time when enrollment in universities across the nation and across the state has declined, we've actually grown our program by almost 30%. We've done so also by becoming the most diverse program on our campus. Nearly 4 in 10 of my majors are underrepresented minorities, which is more than twice the rate of the campus at large. The growth of our program and its success in attracting the very kinds of students who are least represented amongst our student body lead me to confidently report, something that I suspect my colleague to the right is about to say, that the next generations of Michiganders are telling us in no uncertain terms that they want to be studying these fields today because they want to be working in them tomorrow. The trouble is that too many of these graduates are leaving Michigan to do so. Alumni from my program are 3 times as likely as those from the university at large to leave Michigan after they've received their degree. The future economic health and cultural vitality of our state depend on keeping more of those graduates here as they build their careers. And so my recommendation to this committee would be that we would be well served to adopt policies that ensure we can build and sustain a thriving media economy in Michigan. And I believe that House Bills 4907 and 4908 represent an important step in that direction. I appreciate the time today to share Oakland University's testimony, and I welcome any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello to the committee. My name is Hannah Scout Dunaway, and I'm a senior at Grand Valley State University studying film and video production. I've been blessed with my education at GV, making fantastic connections in the industry, creating an award-winning narrative short film, and being taught by wonderful educators, many of whom are alumni themselves. Growing up, I remember hearing stories from my dad about film sets in Detroit while he was finishing his degree in media production. My father chose to set aside his film journey after college so he could raise me and my brother here in state with his family. His passion and endless encouragement have been paramount in support of my career in the industry. I've worked on countless productions while in film school, each finding a new way to capture Michigan's beauty. From Silver Lake sand dunes to the streets of Grand Rapids to the wilderness of the Upper Peninsula, I have found that my art has allowed me to showcase the amazing culture, businesses, and people that Michigan is home to. Yet, I find myself at a loss when I look towards my future as a filmmaker in this state. I desperately wish to stay in my home state and build my life here, but that dream is not presently feasible with the current state of the film industry in Michigan. The film industry is highly competitive, and with the passing of House Bills 4907 and 4908, I and many other young creatives would have the opportunity to not only forge our paths as filmmakers, but to also start our own families and keep up with the growing industry at large. I have witnessed firsthand the talent, passion, and creativity that flows through Michigan, and I've also listened and felt the struggle of finding a job to utilize those skills. A film I created while attending Grand Valley with my filmmaking crew, Future Corpse Productions, recently won Open Projector Night in Grand Rapids, a film festival dedicated to showcasing films either created in-state, about our state, or by Michiganders. The innovation, imagination, and skill displayed were unbelievable, and I am confident that is the case for Michigan creatives as a whole. I encourage our committee members today to make the choice that would allow me and many other recent graduates, my friends, my coworkers, and my closest companions and collaborators, to build a career in our home and use our talent to showcase the states that we love. Thank you.
All right, thank you all so much for your testimony. I'm not sure if any of the members have any questions for our current slate of people giving testimony. Oh, all right. Thank you all so much. All right, next we are going to go to Zoom. we have Larry August from Avalon Films and Hudson Edit here today to testify. All right. Mr. August, whenever you're ready.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Larry August. I'm the owner-operator of Hudson and Avalon Films. Well, we're one of the leading commercial production companies and post-production companies in Michigan for over 25 years. We work for most of the larger advertising agencies and clients in the state, including General Motors, Rocket Mortgage, Blue Cross Blue Shield, Corewell Health. We work on a lot of Pure Michigan ads, etc. I represent a number of companies in our businesses that are certainly would be beneficiaries along with many other businesses here in Michigan, and want to go on record to support this legislation. I currently have, to give you a sense of the scale of our business, I currently have 20 full-time high wage and benefit employees. Those are full-time. And then we also hire approximately 200 freelance film professionals across the state each year to work on various projects. Our average production spend on freelance crew, hotels, catering, lumber and construction, equipment rental, and these kind of expenses is over $2 million per year. And there are probably 30 or 40 companies similar to mine that operate in the state of Michigan, a few larger, maybe the same size or a little smaller. We also lease 7,000 square feet of Class A space downtown in the city of Detroit, 3,000 square feet in Ferndale, and another 10,000 feet of warehouse space also in Ferndale. I have also taught as an adjunct professor at College for Creative Studies in Detroit for 13 years, helping train young people to join our industry. But as you've heard, unfortunately, most of the graduates that I worked with and taught have left the state to find employment, and they would want to stay absolutely in state if that opportunity was available. I think this incentive will allow us to hire more Michigan college graduates from the colleges and universities in both full-time and freelance positions. In recent years, many of our existing clients have taken projects that would have gone to our company or the other companies here in Michigan. They've taken those projects to incentive states like Illinois and Ohio. I think in almost all of those cases, they would have preferred to keep the business here in Michigan. It would have been better, more convenient for them, and they are doing projects with us, but they have specifically taken projects to states that have the incentives that, of course, Michigan currently does not. And our clients have spoken to me about whether Michigan will be having incentives. And I think there's a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of optimism, a lot of willingness to keep a lot more of their production dollars here in the state. And I think this situation will raise all boats, not just my companies as well. And I think there's a lot of awareness and a lot of companies that are watching this legislation and are ready to keep work here and participate in this program if it becomes law. So we're hopeful it does. I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. August. Representative Farhat.
Thank you so much for your testimony. I was just curious. I know you mentioned that many of your employees are either high wage or good paying. Can you give me a scope of when we hear that term, what are we talking about in the industry? What is what is a good paying salary in the industry?
Well, so we have most of the full-time employees that I have are grouped in the post-production side of our business. Several are on the production side, but as you know, production scale up and then scale down. So the amount of full-time employees involved in production, those are primarily employees involved in quoting projects, pursuing projects, bidding projects, and then once we are awarded a project, we scale up to the 40 to 60 employees, freelancers that we use to do the production. When we transition to post-production, then we have editors, assistant editors, motion graphics people, flame artists, audio people, etc., that are full-time folks that work for us. So I would say our average full-time employee makes right around $100,000 with full benefits and retirement. The top end would be double that. The low end would be 70, 75. So that's kind of the range of salary full-time.
All right, yeah, that's a good perspective. Thank you so much.
All right. Looks like there's no other questions. All right. Thank you so much for your testimony, Mr. August. All right. Next, we will have Mr. James Holman from the Mackinac Center. He's Director of Fiscal Policy. All right. Thank you for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me up.
Oh, yeah.
I'm doing all right. Yourself?
Good, good.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, I'm James Homan. I'm the Director of Fiscal Policy at the Mackinac Center, a think tank based in Midland, Michigan. And paying up to 30% of a film's cost is an expensive favor that will only leave taxpayers worse off. Economic development programs like this ought to be judged based on how well they're going to develop the economy. And we can look at the assessments made by economists of film subsidies, as well as Michigan's own experience, to note that this is not going to be successful. So Michigan spent $500 million on film subsidies in its previous iteration and received no sustainable film industry in exchange for that. So when you look at the economic performance of the state of Michigan, you can see that this expenditure did result in a gain of a couple of hundred jobs in the film industry in exchange for $500 million. So it's a terrible cost benefit. But more importantly than that, when you look at both the creation and the dissolution of the program, it resulted in no change in Michigan's overall job trends, which is something that lawmakers ought to care a lot about. And of course, this matches up with the experience that economists have had when they try to isolate the effects of film subsidies. So as J.C. Bradbury put it in his 2020 review, the gains from film producers or from film credits produce gains for film producers that do not spill over into the overall economy. In other words, film producers win and taxpayers lose. And this actually makes sense when you consider the costs of the program. The $500 million that we spent on film production could have been spent on schools or roads or poverty alleviation programs that also have the secondary and tertiary benefits that our film industries have pointed at as the primary benefits of this program. Now, I wanted to talk about one other feature of this program in this proposed legislation: the ability for film producers to sell their credits to other taxpayers. This is a problem and not a benefit. Laundering payments to film producers through other taxpayers decreases transparency of the program because tax credits are not subject to the same disclosure requirements that direct grants are. In addition, operating the program as a tax credit rather than a direct grant means that legislators lose control of their ability to set annual fiscal policy through the budgeting process, something that legislators should carefully guard. So, I mean, that's my basic problems with the film subsidy. Economic development programs need to be judged by how well they develop the economy. The assessments made by economists suggest this is not going to be successful, and we've seen that lack of success in Michigan's own experience. So thank you for letting me testify on this, and I welcome any questions.
All right, thank you. Representative Tisdale.
Thank you, Chair Hoskins. Mr. Homan, over here.
Oh, yeah.
Real quickly, so you said the idea of subsidizing up to 30% of the production costs. So this is a tax credit. Would any of these production companies have a Michigan tax burden equal to 30% of the cost of their production?
From the Michigan's experience, when it was a refundable tax credit, there's not much. There's a lot of shell games that can be done to hide revenue, and Michigan only taxes C corporations in its corporate income tax. So yeah, there's very little tax revenue. The tax credits are costs.
But up to 30% of the tax credit could be up to 30% of the production cost?
Of their Michigan spend, subject to the restrictions that the bill has, which I think that the chair has kind of gone over. But yeah, it's up to 30% of the cost. That's the benefit the companies receive.
Of a tax credit?
So
credit for their tax burden?
So no, they get 30% of what they spend in Michigan, again subject to restrictions, and they take that tax credit and then they sell it to, which is not based on what their tax liabilities are. It has nothing to do with their tax liabilities. These production companies should have very little tax liability, so they get this huge tax credit that they can't use and they can't trade in for a refund, and then they sell that to another taxpayer. So the production company receives cash, they go home with cash, and then another company buys that tax credit at a discount and then uses that to defray their tax liabilities.
Okay. But this is not a refundable program.
No, it's
not
refundable.
Yeah, it is non-refundable, but the company that receives these tax credits do come away with cash. And there are consequences for that cash. That is money that is going to be used to defer some other taxpayers' tax liabilities that they would not have received otherwise, which means that in lieu of this program, you would have $2 billion worth of cash that you could spend on schools or roads or sewers or any other public service that is a priority for lawmakers.
Okay, thank you.
Representative Van Workum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of my questions is related to that process of reselling those credits. One of the information sheets we have in front of us says it's a broker. I'm not sure what is outlined in the legislation of who that broker is, what the qualifications are, whether that is in-house, as in the MEDC in the film office. Can you lend what that broker would look like, who that would be, and maybe some guardrails or protections that would prevent some of that and create some of that accountability?
Yeah, there are people who specialize in selling tax credits from businesses to other businesses. Lawmakers have made a number of tax credit programs transferable. So, for instance, the old mega brownfield credits for developments were transferable before lawmakers made them refundable. So yeah, there are businesses that specialize in saying to Consumers Energy or any other large business in Michigan, you have a large tax liability, I can reduce that. I've got these film producers who have these credits. You can give them 85 to 90% of the value of that credit in cash, and then you get that tax credit, which you can use to defray your tax liabilities. Yes, the brokers do take a cut. It's a pretty small amount, but yeah, they exist.
You raised some concerns about some of the accountability on that, particularly for lawmakers. Is there some suggestions that we should consider as we're reviewing this?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, there are a couple of different types of credits. I would much prefer to see, I don't like the tax credit because it decreases the amount of transparency in the program. Because again, the ability of residents to get information about tax credits is much less than the ability to get information about direct expenditures. So I don't know how disclosable those brokers' fees are going to be, who eventually receives these tax credits, what discount has been offered from this one, or even whether that type of information is FOIA-able. But for direct grant programs, that's clearly it's FOIA-able. And then again, the other reason why I like grant programs more than tax credits is that it is subject to the annual budgeting process. This is an expenditure just like any other fiscal priority. Lawmakers are starting the budget process right now, and if subsidizing film industries is a priority for the majority of lawmakers, they should argue for it in the budget process. Now, I would argue that it's a bad idea because economic development programs need to be proven to develop the economy, but there's a lot of things that the legislature does that I disagree with, and but that should be a subject for the legislative debate, and I would much prefer to have that legislative debate go on in the annual budget process.
All right, I got to move on to the next person, but thanks. Thank you for your testimony. All right, on Zoom, we have Mr. Jacob, and I hope I don't mess up your name, Jacob Witten from Good Jobs First. All right, whenever you're ready.
I am. Thank you. And that is correct. So good morning, members of the committee. My name is Jacob Witten. I'm a research analyst with Good Jobs First, a nonpartisan research and policy resource center promoting transparency and accountability in economic development. I am also a resident of the city of Detroit, and in my capacity as both a policy researcher and Michigander, I wish to express my strong opposition to proposed legislation reviving the state's film tax credit program. Good Jobs First has tracked states' use of film subsidies since their proliferation in the early 2000s. Over the last 2 decades, economists and auditors tasked with evaluating these programs have consistently found that despite their considerable cost, they deliver a small financial return on the public's dollar. The state of Georgia, for instance, has the country's most expensive film tax credit program. A report released earlier this month from the Georgia Department of Auditors found that for every dollar in film tax credits awarded, the state recouped just 21 cents, resulting in a net loss of over $850 million in revenue. And Georgia is not an exception. In 2021, the state of Florida estimated that its film tax credit returned just 7 cents for every dollar awarded. The same report also reviewed more than 10 years of independent analyses looking at film tax credit programs across dozens of states. 19 out of 30 evaluations estimated a rate of return of less than 20 cents, including a 2010 report from Michigan's Senate Fiscal Agency finding a return of just 11 cents. We shouldn't expect tax cuts to pay for themselves, nor can it be denied that these programs have induced some new economic activity where they are adopted. But these modest returns must be weighed against other higher impact public investments. Assuming a return of 20 cents on the dollar, these bills stand to divert $1.7 billion from Michigan's general and school aid funds over the next decade. The question before this committee is whether Michiganders are in fact best served by shaving $1.7 billion off the tax liability of big corporations who we know invariably end up purchasing these credits from their original recipients. In Illinois, 5 companies purchased more than half of all tax credits issued between 2014 and 2021: Comcast, US Bank, Verizon, Walmart, and Bank of America. Collectively, they managed to reduce their tax bill by $325 million over these 8 years. Should tax breaks for big companies really take precedence over spending on our schools, our infrastructure, affordable housing? A 2020 paper published by 2 Harvard economists in the Quarterly Journal of Economics found that investments in the health and education of low-income children generate such high returns as to, in some cases, actually pay for themselves. I urge members of this committee to leave Michigan's film tax credit program in the past where it belongs and to prioritize investment in the public goods and services that are the real foundation of our shared prosperity. Thank you, and I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right. Representative Tisdale.
Thank you, Chair Hoskins. Jacob, thank you for testifying today. Quick question. So you indicated that up to $851 million in lost tax revenues, I believe it was in the state of Georgia. What percentage or what amount of that $850 million in lost tax revenues would have been occurred without the incentives?
So this is net of the revenue gained from the program. So all told, they lost over $1 billion in revenue and received about 20 cents on the for every dollar lost. So on net, that's an $850 million hit to the state's revenue take.
And how much of that would have been incurred without the incentives? How much of that activity would have occurred without the incentives? The activity that generated the tax.
Estimated that about $2.70 of new economic activity was created for every dollar awarded. And then, of course, that $2.70 generated only 20 additional cents in revenue back to the state. So another way to think about this was the state ultimately paid $850 million to generate about $2.3 billion in new economic activity.
But the question I'm asking is which...
I want to stress, though, is we have to consider if they had spent $850 million on something else, would they have perhaps gotten bigger bang for their buck?
Assuming that $850 million in taxable activity would have occurred without the film incentives.
Yes, well,
Okay,
this
thank you.
is, again, taking into consideration that new economic activity did occur and offset the $1 billion that they awarded in credits with an additional $200 million in new revenue. So that is $850 million in real losses to the state's general fund.
All right. All right. Thank you, Mr. Witten, for your testimony. All right, I got one more person to bring up. Mr. Barton Bund from SAG-AFTRA and the city of Ypsilanti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, representatives. My name is Barton Bund. I'm a member of Screen Actors Guild and Actors Equity Association, and these are the professional unions that are made up of over 200,000 actors nationwide. And I'm here speaking strongly in favor of Bills 4907 and 4908. Between the years 2009 and 2016, I had the best years of my professional life. I was an actor. I was living in Ypsilanti. I had done Shakespeare. I had taught high school drama, and I had done every kind of car commercial that you can imagine. I was a hand model. But suddenly, I was working on big studio films and TV series all across the state, including the international blockbuster Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice, which employed hundreds of local people in featured roles in front of the camera, behind the camera, in this massive months-long production. The film grossed over $873 million worldwide, and we still receive residuals checks from that film. I was in the room. You talk about a childhood dream come true. I was in the room as the brand new Wonder Woman armored gold suit was revealed one day. They pulled a big sheet off of it, and I couldn't believe I was there. I was one of the first people in the world to see it. Now, nearby, we were shooting we were prepping our scene. I was playing CIA. Now, our little set was beautiful. It had a whole panel of computers and things that were lighting up. Unfortunately, they were not lighting up. We were stalled. The set was only half complete. So a background performer who was playing a soldier, he steps up, and turns out he was the real thing. And he steps up and he says, "I was an electrician in Afghanistan. Can I take a look at it?" They said, "Sure, go ahead." He switched the wires around. He adjusted a few things. Computer parts worked. Let's roll camera. Now, this man, think about this. This man who survived a war and returned home, and now he's appearing in a Superman movie, another dream come true. He took his skills that he acquired in the military, and now he's applying them on a studio film. And I knew, when I saw that happen, and I knew that across the state, every single day, magical moments like that were happening, where local people were integral to gigantic world-class studio productions on the scale of the biggest you can imagine. Now, to find work, me as an actor, I have to go to Pittsburgh or to Chicago. And I've heard that the new Superman movie is going to be shooting in Cincinnati, Ohio. And I don't want to go back to Ohio unless I have to. The work simply isn't here in Michigan. It is a lost opportunity for the people of Michigan and businesses in Michigan. Shakespeare said, "I never did repent for doing good, nor shall not now." And you have the chance now to do some genuine good for the people in your communities. These are good-paying jobs on large-scale studio productions for young people in Michigan, with or without a four-year college degree. Our talent stays here in Michigan, the money stays here in Michigan, and for those two reasons, I implore you to support Bills 4907 and 4908 and restore Michigan's film industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Mr. Bund? No? All right, thank you, Chairman. Oh, wait. Oh. I'm going to bring back Mr. Page very quickly, and then he'll be our last one. I'm sure you had some thoughts about some of that testimony there, and I wanted to give you a quick opportunity to talk about some of the things you heard.
Thank you, Chairman. I think first and foremost, one of the things that I wanted to bring up is about transparency. So one of the things that we made sure in these bills crafting with our bill sponsors is that it's about good data in and good data out. A lot of the states and a lot of reporting, the reason that you get a lot of these negative reports is that they don't have good data. So we worked really hard with economists to make sure that these programs are collecting and requiring good, transparent data so that the legislators can make informed decisions on whether this program works along the way. I think one of the other states' comments to bring up is there's a talk about value and worth. And when we're talking about that, we're in the economic development and small business. So these are economic development bills, and that's what we're talking about here. Fiscal generation of tax money, that's a different group altogether. So when they're talking about return on investment, of course, yes. Any program that you have an incentive, no matter what it is, film or any other program, you're not going to get a positive return on tax dollars. That's the whole point of an incentive program. What you're looking for is the economic value. So for Georgia, for instance, in 2022, they got, for every dollar they spent was $6.3 in return. It was $8.5 billion in total economic activity, with around $4 billion in direct spend. So that's a really high return on investment in activity for the investment put in.
All right, thank you. Representative Van Workum, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You actually spoke a lot about what I was going to ask about. I've got written here, ratio, return on investment, use data in, data out. And I think that was one of the major issues of the previous film incentive tax credit was you didn't have the data. And a lot of the testimony today is about those other jobs, the lumber yards and things like that. So looking at the information your office has provided and knowing there's a cap here and saying that there's going to be 300, 500 million, one of the questions is, where are you getting these numbers? What are you including in these numbers? Another big question about this, and a lot of the testimony and a lot of the shine here is the Batman and Superman. It's the Transformers. But the testimony that I'm hearing is more about the smaller commercials and things like that. So what is the actual goal here? Who are we trying to attract here? A lot of the questions from the committee members was about what are these jobs. With the previous film credit, it was trying to create those big studios, trying to establish something here in the state of Michigan. This is not going that, but we're still seeing this being presented to us that these are the goals of getting Superman filmed here and things like that. So I guess my question is two-part. What is the actual data you guys are providing to us that is showing this? Does it have the conciliatory things that we keep on hearing testimony about? And what is the goal here? I get that film and try and keep people here. Is it the big studios? Is it the commercials? Is it trying to create permanent jobs here? Is it trying to help those independent film producers? There's a lot going on here that doesn't seem to have that direct goal, and I don't know if we're getting the data that we need to make the decision as an economic development piece of legislation.
Thank you, Representative. So in terms of the data, these are coming from reports, and I'm happy to share them. We have reports from Oxford Economic Group plus Olsberg, very respective economists in the field, and we can provide those reports for you. Also, in terms of what the goal is, the trend is different. So a good example is Illinois. Before COVID, their production spend was roughly a third TV, a third commercials, and a third movies. It's now shifted to 86% TV and streaming, because that's where things are going. Those are 8 to 9 month projects. That's where everything is trending out. Our program knows that really the hard-working backbone is the commercials, corporate videos, and so we have our own separate bucket to grow that industry. So it starts at 25 and then grows over time. And then we have a separate bucket for 20 minutes and over for your TV and episodic. So the shifting is more of these shows that can be season over season. You're looking at more investment into the infrastructure. What you want to be able to do is have that long term. So if people know they're going to be here, they're going to invest into the programs. When I talk about the direct spend, that number is just simple math. That's around the money that needs to be spent in order to use the tax credits that are provided. There's no economic models or in plan. That is just pure, that's the amount of money needed to be spent in the state in order to use up the credits. Hope that helps.
All right, I got to wrap up. There was a lot of enthusiasm about this legislation. We got 3 overflow rooms. I have 66 letters of support here, a number of cards. I'm not going to be able to read them in, but they will be added to the record. With that, there are no absent members today. And Representative Grant moves to approve the minutes of the October 31st meeting. Without objection, so ordered. There being no further business before the committee stands adjourned.